He just looked like an old man. Every afternoon, he'd sit alone on the deck of the yacht, staring out to sea. Nobody asked questions. Nobody paid attention. Just an old tourist, until someone looked closely. But some secrets are only visible to eyes that truly observe. Tonight, we'll uncover the depth hidden behind silence. A forgotten hero, a hidden oath, and a young man's brave curiosity. Welcome to Know My Channel. Today, we bring you a tale of forgotten oaths and silent ghosts. Before we begin, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. And if you believe stories like this need to be heard, hit that subscribe button. Because we tell the human stories the world is forgetting. Maine's coastline shimmered under the last light of the day as the massive yacht Ocean's Majesty docked at a small marina. The vessel was a floating palace of wealth, filled with tourists, breathtaking views, and expensive cocktails. Yet, in a corner of the deck, away from all the glamour, sat an elderly man. His name was listed as Frank Morrison on the passenger manifest. At least, that's what it said. His graying dark brown hair fluttered in the wind. Deep lines etched his face, carrying the traces of years, and perhaps other, heavier things. His pant leg was slightly rolled up, resting his leg, inadvertently revealing a glimpse of a complex tattoo on his calf. A symbol, intricate and hard to decipher at a glance. A young man, around 18, noticed. His name was Ethan. His family was wealthy, accustomed to such yachts. But this time, something felt different. Perhaps it wasn't just another boring vacation, but a whiff of mystery. Ethan looked carefully at the tattoo. That symbol, where had he seen it? Was it in his father's old military photo albums? Or a documentary? He couldn't quite place it, but it was familiar. That evening, over dinner, Ethan brought it up with his mother. "Mom, there was this man on the deck today. I think he had a tattoo on his leg. It looked really interesting." His mother smiled dismissively. "Probably just a decoration, sweetie. People get tattoos everywhere these days." But Ethan's mind lingered on that symbol. When he got home, he rummaged through boxes stored in his father's old room. After hours of searching, he found an album from his father's time in the Vietnam War. As he flipped through the pages, there it was. That symbol. It was the mark of a highly classified special operations unit within the Navy. The names of these units were never public. They existed only in whispers and records that were supposed to be sealed. Only that symbol bound them together. The next morning, Ethan returned to the ship early. Frank was there again, sitting by the deck rail, holding a cup of tea, staring out at the horizon. His eyes held a deep loneliness and the heavy burden of the past. Ethan watched him from a few meters away. The way Frank held his cup, the precision in his fingers, Ethan recognized it. His father's old military friend's hands were like that. Every movement carried the imprint of training. Frank sensed Ethan watching him. He slowly turned his head and looked at him. A flicker of fear appeared in his eyes. Then, that expression settled back into calmness. It was as if he had accidentally revealed a secret he hadn't let anyone see in years. Ethan hesitated to approach. He noticed the fear in the man's eyes. This was no longer just idle curiosity. This was tracing a secret. And this secret suggested a hero had spent years hiding his past. Frank slowly put his cup down on the table. His hand didn't tremble. Every movement carried control and discipline. Ethan wanted to talk to him, but he didn't know how to start. Because this wasn't just a conversation. This was about tearing down the walls a man had guarded for years. The sun began to set slowly. The ship's deck turned golden. Frank got up from his chair. Ethan also jumped to his feet. He didn't want to wait anymore. He had to learn this secret. Frank looked at Ethan. Now there was not only fear but also a glimmer of hope in his eyes. As if he had finally heard a question he had been waiting for years. "You saw that symbol where?" Frank asked, his voice shaky but determined. Ethan took out his father's album and put it on the table. "Here, in my dad's photos from Vietnam." Frank reached for the album but then pulled his hand back. His eyes welled up. "Then you know, that symbol, it's not just a tattoo. It's an oath." And the price of that oath was very heavy. Ethan sensed there was more darkness in Frank's past. "Who are you?" After a long silence, Frank spoke. "I'm not Frank Morrison. That name died years ago. My real name is William Ghost Roberts. I was the leader of a special operations team that went missing in Vietnam." Ethan's breath caught. "Ghost Roberts? I've heard that name. The missing team?" Frank bowed his head. "We went missing during an operation against pirates. We were trying to stop a pirate group trafficking weapons in secret harbors in Vietnam, but we fell into a trap. Most of my team was left there. I was wounded by a mine explosion. When I woke up, I was missing my arm and my identity. That night, as I was dragged through the darkness, I heard the pirates searching for bodies. If they found me, I would have just been a corpse. So, I became Frank Morrison. For years, I hid my identity. Nobody asked. Nobody cared." Ethan was trying to grasp the depth of this story. "So why are you afraid now?" Frank looked out at the horizon. "Because some secrets, when brought to light, call back the ghosts of the past. That pirate group, they might still be active. And if they learn I'm still alive. Suddenly, an alarm sounded on the ship. A loud announcement was made, due to dangerous sea conditions, we are returning to port. When Ethan looked at Frank, terror had appeared on the man's face. They know, Frank whispered. They found me. On the deck, a few more people were moving in a conspicuous way. Their eyes were scanning everyone, their hands resting on things that looked like weapons. Ethan realized there was real danger. Frank leaned toward Ethan. It's too late for me, but not for you. Take that album. Tell my story, but don't stay here. Ethan didn't want to leave Frank, but the man pushed Ethan away with determination in his eyes. Go, and remember, real heroes are known not by victory, but by surviving. Ethan clutched the album tightly and ran toward the inside of the ship. In the background, he heard Frank's screams. Ethan didn't look back, but that night, he swore to tell Frank Morrison's story. And perhaps, in that dark harbor, a ghost still roamed. The spirit of a hero who continued to pay the price of an oath. William Roberts, or Frank Morrison as he was known, was born in 1942. He grew up in a small town. His father was a fisherman, his mother a housewife. As a young man, he was talkative and energetic. He wanted to go to college, but when the Korean War broke out, he enlisted in the army. He was accepted into the Navy and his talents were quickly recognized. When the Vietnam War started, Roberts was involved in setting up a very special unit. This unit consisted only of the most trusted officers, officially not even recorded in the files. Their purpose was to carry out critical missions behind enemy lines. Roberts became the leader of this unit. Known as the Ghost Team, this squad moved like ghosts, silently and effectively completing their missions. In 1967, Ghost Team faced a very dangerous mission. Deep in the jungles of Vietnam, there was a secret harbor. This harbor was the base of pirate groups smuggling weapons and supplies to North Vietnam's Western allies. American intelligence determined this harbor was a critical threat and sent Roberts' team. The operation was highly classified. Roberts and the 12 soldiers who went with him set sail at midnight. Their objective was to scout the harbor and neutralize the pirate group's leaders. However, the operation went wrong from the start. The pirates had information about the Americans' arrival. When Roberts and his team arrived at the harbor, they had fallen into a trap. The pirates had surrounded the harbor. Fire began. Ghost Team members were wounded one by enemy fire. Roberts, trying to protect most of his team, was caught in a mine explosion. The blast blew off his arm and he lost consciousness. When he woke up, he realized he was in a hospital. However, this hospital was operated by the enemy. The pirates had captured Roberts alive. They wanted to interrogate him, but Roberts didn't say anything during the few days of interrogation. His eyes were glazed, his body covered in deep wounds. The pirates wanted to kill him, but Roberts' resistance, even with just one arm, impressed them. Instead of killing him, they reported to their enemies that he was dead, making it seem like his body was lost. A few weeks later, when Roberts regained consciousness, he found himself in a village, being cared for by the local people. The villagers had found him on the shore the night the pirates were searching for corpses. Roberts decided to hide his identity. He made up the name Frank Morrison. With this name, he hid his identity for years. Over the years, Roberts worked in different places. He tried not to draw attention anywhere. However, the past he carried inside never left him alone. Every night, he had the same dreams: explosions, screams, and darkness. Eventually, he settled in Maine. Here, he started working on a farm. Over the years, no one questioned his past. Roberts just worked and lived his life alone. However, the tattoo he had on his leg would eventually expose his past. When Ethan learned Frank Morrison's story, he wanted to tell it. However, Frank also had fears. The ghosts of the past had never stopped chasing him. That pirate group might still be active. And if they learned Roberts was still alive, they might target young people like Ethan too. As he ran inside the ship, Ethan thought about all these things in his mind. He clutched the album tightly. It had now become his duty to tell Frank's story. As the ship docked at the port, Ethan got off. When he looked back, he saw that Frank was no longer on the deck. That night, he had heard Frank's screams. And those screams were something he had heard for the first time after years. When Ethan got home, he called his father. "Dad, I need to tell you something very important," he said. His father asked, "What happened, son?" Ethan told his father Frank Morrison's real identity and past. His father was very surprised when he heard this story. "Ghost Roberts? I never heard he was still alive," he said. His father used his old military contacts and examined Roberts' records. Actually, it had been reported that Roberts was dead. However, his body had never been found. This meant Roberts could still be alive. Ethan and his father decided to investigate Roberts' past further. Roberts' story was not just a war story. At the same time, it was the story of a hero carrying pain and loneliness for years. and this story deserved to be told. A few days later, Ethan went back to the ship. He learned that Frank Morrison was no longer there. The ship's owner asked, "Who was that man?" Ethan said, "Just a passenger." But inside, he felt that Frank's story needed to be told. When Ethan returned to school, he shared this story with his classmates. Everyone was very interested in this story. Ethan turned Frank Morrison's story into a composition and presented it to his teacher. His teacher realized how impactful this story was and gave permission for it to be published in the school newspaper. When this story was published in the school newspaper, it went viral quickly. People were very interested in this forgotten hero's story. Ethan tried to answer people's questions about who Frank Morrison was in the comments. Meanwhile, where was Frank Morrison? After the ship docked at the port, Frank had left the ship to escape danger. When he got to shore, he started walking into a dark forest. There, he had built a cabin years ago. This cabin was his sanctuary. When Frank arrived at his cabin, he was exhausted. Ethan's words had exposed his past. His identity could no longer be hidden. Perhaps this was also a kind of salvation. The burden he had carried for years was now being carried by someone else. As he sat in his cabin, he thought about his past. That dark night in Vietnam, his friend's screams, the mine explosion. All these memories still followed him. But now, he no longer had to carry this burden alone. While sitting in his cabin, he heard this news. He was surprised. To see his story being told after years made him very emotional. Perhaps this was also a kind of salvation. The secret he had hidden for years was now being carried by someone else. Ethan was very happy when he saw that Robert's story had gone viral. He realized that this story had attracted the attention of many people. And this showed that the pain Roberts had carried alone for years was no longer just on his shoulders. One day, Ethan found a letter in his mailbox. There was an address on the letter he didn't recognize. When he opened the letter, there were only a few lines inside. "Young man, thank you for telling my story. I'm no longer alone. The past will no longer abandon me. Frank." When Ethan read this letter, his eyes welled up. To know that Roberts was still alive made him very happy. And this story giving salvation to a hero after years gave him hope. Real heroes are not known by victory parades, but by surviving. Like Frank Morrison, a man carrying the wounds of war, living with them not with pride, but with dignity. And a young man like Ethan, with curiosity and respect, brought Morrison's forgotten past back into the light. Perhaps, in this world, there are many Frank Morrisons. People who hide their past, live alone, but carry great heroism inside. And perhaps, all we need is to look closer at them. Some heroes don't emerge with fanfare or victory parade. Like William Roberts, a man carrying the wounds of war, living with them not with pride, but with quiet dignity. Real stories only gain meaning when they're told, and more importantly, by whom they're told. A young man like Ethan, with curiosity and respect, was enough to bring Robert's forgotten past back into the light. So, have you ever met an invisible hero? Maybe a neighbor, a family elder, or a familiar face on the street. Write their name in the comments. Let's tell their story. Because this is Know My Channel, and we believe the most powerful stories speak in silence. If this story moved you, don't forget to like and share. Subscribe to Know My Channel to help ensure these real human accounts continue to be told. See you in the next story. And next time you see someone, maybe they have a story too. Just look closer.